So now let's talk efficiency. When I first got this cooler, the first thing I wanted to do was see how long my 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery would keep this cooler on. I did not pre-chill it at all. It started at room temperature. I had the freezer zone set to 0 degrees and I had the cooler zone set to 33 degrees, nothing inside of it, and this lasted over 3.5 days before my battery was depleted. My house was about 75 degrees in the room for the ambient temperature, for whatever that's worth, so now I have a baseline to know how long inside at that temperature the 100 amp hour battery will last me. When I went camping, I filled this cooler to the brim. And Wednesday night, I put the cooler plugged into my battery in the back of my Explorer. It was on battery power the entire weekend from Wednesday evening until 2:30 on Sunday when I got home. We kept the cooler outside, and the outside temperature ranged anywhere from about 55 degrees during the day to about 30 degrees at night. In that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday period, I only used 20 amp hours. Now, again, the cooler was outside, so the ambient temperature outside was doing some of the heavy lifting. So I know during the cool times, this cooler is going to last a very, very long time. Unfortunately, it's January in Texas, so it is still a little chilly. I'm curious to see how this will perform in 100-degree weather that we have in the summer, but I suspect with food inside, food and drinks inside that keep it cold, so the compressor isn't kicking on, I still suspect this would do very well. The reason I got the stainless steel instead of the black is to eliminate any kind of heat or mitigate the heat that this would get in the sun. So if you're in hot weather or hot areas like Texas, Arizona, the South, you might want to consider not getting the black and going with the stainless steel option. Just with I know with the Texas sun going down on anything black, stuff gets hot, so that might affect the performance and the longevity of the battery. But I also have tons of solar to offset this, so long as I have sun, I would never anticipate running out of power powering this cooler. Now, in terms of current draw, when the cooler and freezer are both on, after the cooler has chilled down, which it takes about 45 minutes for the temperatures to settle when you initially plug it in, when I first plugged it in, the battery showed a load of about 6.6 amps. You know, the cooler's really in full bore trying to cool things down as fast as it can. Once the temperatures were settled though, when the compressor was not on, it was pulling almost zero current, like hundredths of an amp of current, which would just be to kind of keep the electronics on. When the compressor kicked on, I would see around 4 amps of current draw, but then it would drop down to about 2, presumably because the cooler side of the cooler only needs to go so low, so it would turn off the cooler side of it, but it would still have the freezer side on, thus showing that 2 amp draw. So it is really smart in how it cools. It knows there's different zones. It knows that, okay, this temperature in the freezer isn't as low as what it's set, but the temperature for the cooler is, so we can just shut off the cooler side of the cooling and it draws less power. So it's really smart. I'm very pleased with the way that it handles power and the longevity that I've got out of it. So that's just my tests in my area, so your results will vary. But I am impressed with the efficiency of this cooler.